Hello, this is Black Country Blokes chewing the fat.
Listen.
I've been hearing a lot lately about men don't talk, but in my experience, men do talk, just people aren't listening. So it's going to be me and a group of blokes discussing our struggles and victories through life. Warning, there may be some bad language, so apologies to all the moms, especially my own. Let's get going.
Listen.
I've been just the Black Country Blokes, chewing the fat about everything it is men's mental health, disability, and life in general. Here, me, Kev Dillon, and my partner in crime, as always, Lee Cadman. Now, we're joined by two guests today. Gav, who's one of my coaches from downstairs at Lions ABC, and his uncle Pras. And I'll be telling you all about these two wonderful people and covering so many subjects as always. But as always, I'd like to start with our gratitude list. I forgot what I was about to say then. Our gratitude list. Now, me and Lee were honoured. We were at Buckingham Palace on Tuesday, last Tuesday, at the garden party. I mean, what a wonderful experience, you know, rubbing shoulders with princes and princesses. But I was also on the weekend, anyone who knows, I lost one of my boxers and coaches at Christmas, Ashley Nixon. So we put him up on the wall, his plaque, and his son and family was there with us. We all had a good drink and chat about him. So, yeah, two wonderful things, two completely different things, one painful, but I know Ashley's here now and he'll always be here and have the acknowledgement of the King's Award and going to the palace. So, and you know, our wives getting together, it was lovely how long we've known each other, but you can count on one hand how many times we've got together as four people having a drink and having a laugh.
Yeah, it was a special day, wasn't it? And I mean, that's got to be my gratitude as well, Kev. I think we've both got to use that, haven't we, this week? Just because I was really grateful. It was a great, couple of days, wasn't it? And to stay over, and yeah, I really enjoyed it. It was great getting together. We had a great meal on the night.
Yeah.
It was just fun, wasn't it?
Yeah. New Gav, what are you grateful for, brother?
Well, that's it. You know, so much of the time we can have communications with our friends and our families, but that moment of being able to just meet up with them and having that moment to be with them, that's something I'm always going to be grateful and gratitude for. Yes.
And you, Press, what are you grateful for, brother?
Well, this morning I think we all wake up and we woke up and we opened two beautiful gifts, and that's our eyes. And we're all here today talking about something very important. That's what I'm very grateful. We're all very grateful for.
Well, Press, I mean, thank you ever so much for coming on, bruv. Could you tell us a little bit about what got you into mental health, first of all, please?
Well, that goes back quite far, actually. And it's quite a while ago when I was still studying at college. And it's a mind. It's how the mind works, always fascinating. I find it very fascinating. And it's something that I've always wanted to find out more. And of course, I came, same as Gav. No, not you, Gav. Sorry.
No,
I had to remember that I know you were born here. I was born on a very small island where that kind of opportunities didn't exist to study about psychology, the brain, mental health, and well-being and all that. So that's why I left and came to Europe and came to England and study about mental health. And it is also about something that at the time, things are changing now, the stigma around it. We'll get probably a chance to talk about it also later. The stigma around it, it's something that we didn't talk about. And if you do, people tend to look at you in a very different way. And it's something that not everyone will be very comfortable to even mention it. And it was, as I said, this is a long time ago. And but also my area where I have specialized is forensic mental health. And this is where criminality and criminology meets psychology. It's an area that's really even more fascinating for me, and I always wanted to find out a bit more about what happened with these individuals, why, what happens in the brain, what happens in the mind, and why they find themselves in the criminal justice system. I'm talking about those with mental illness, severe mental illness, but it's more than just that. It's more complex issues like psychopathology and other things that I was really fascinated by and wanted to find out. So that brought me to Europe and to do further studies, and also the other aspect of it was, when I say stigma, it's about watching those who needed help and couldn't get the help they need, and society itself, culture itself, how it was at that time, and how it changed people's uh, views about mental health. For me, that was something very important. And interestingly, when I came over to study over here, they always ask me, well, why mental health? You could have done anything else, but why do you have to go into mental health? And that was again the early days when I was studying, but now it's different, and which is good.
And I think it's good, sorry, Pras, like what you're saying, like, because like when we think of mental health, like we like, not so much nowadays, but especially growing up in the 80s and 90s, when you looked at psychopaths and all this, it was very demonizing in movies, wasn't it? Whereas we know the severe cases of mental health can be that, but there's so many different forms and faces of it, isn't it? From anxiety, depression, OCD, bipolar. They're not all criminals, are they? That's just a very, very tiny minority of people, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I mean, this another interesting area about psychopathy. I mean, the tendencies, the traits that most of it have. Some of them maybe a bit less than others, and those who have it a lot. And it's always debatable about the debate about nature and nurture, debate about what really, where it really starts. And we're all born, we all inherit certain traits, genes. We've got them, and then nature plays its part as well in it. It's whether we become one or not. And there are some interesting research. There is, I can't remember, there was a program not too long ago about a professor, and he had all the trait to become one, but he didn't. And he was looking at everything around his upbringing and everything else. And having worked in the prison, I'm not surprised sometimes how these individuals find themselves in this in the criminal justice system. So yeah, absolutely, it's something that's very debatable, and it's a combination of nature and nurture.
And you're saying, I mean, like, I think it's like even like with suicidal thoughts. I mean, I think most people have thought about suicide, but not many people have acted upon the thoughts. And I think that's like when you're suffering with depression, or you have these thoughts. And I have a million thoughts every day, but I act on very few. And I think it's when your thoughts take over your actions. That's when the results of it comes from it. Have I made sense with that?
Yeah, we are all riding this continuum, and it's important to understand a few definition about what mental health, mental illness. If I may, just I'll clarify a few things so I can explain this a bit better. Mental health is used. We all have it, though we may not. Some may not want to talk about it, but we all have it. It's this overall state of our psychological, emotional functioning. And it's our ability to cope with stress, maintain relationship, make decisions. And it, as I say, it exists on a spectrum, from when we are thriving to when we are struggling. And what you're referring to, sometimes you have these thoughts, and not too different from physical health, where it can be good. Even your physical health can be good or poor. Your mental health also can be good or poor. And there's nothing wrong. Sometimes, you get sick, you are physically unwell, but you can get mentally unwell as well. So it's not a big issue, but it's perceived that way. And as I say, with physical health, it can be good or poor, regardless of one having the illness. And same thing with mental health as well. And then you have the mental illness, which is clinically diagnosed conditions that disrupt the way we think, the way we feel, the way we behave. And as you mentioned, suicidal thoughts, which may come from anxiety, depression, or even more severe illness, psychotic illness like schizophrenia. And sometimes it's an imbalance also, as we were referring to a point earlier you made. it's one of those concepts is very difficult to work with because it's an abstract concept. Sometimes when like a bipolar disorder, when you can see the chemical imbalance, biochemical imbalance, then yeah, people may this become more acceptable for some people. Yeah, I've got a physical problem here that's causing me to become mentally unwell, and but as I say, with mental well-being, it's that positive aspect of mental health, which you're flourishing, you become resilient, you have life satisfaction. But we are on that, as I say, on that continuum, and it's not something that just happens suddenly. Tomorrow you're you got a clinical diagnosis of a mental illness, severe mental health issue. It's something that happens gradually over time, but sometimes people don't realize what's happening. So we are all going, it's like it's a very fine line. We're crossing that line all the time. We're going there, coming back. But if we tend to stay too long on that side, the other side, that's where it becomes chronic and we get diagnosed, and that's where we develop a severe mental illness, and then we need help. So life as it is, we experience it, and but there are things that happen in our life, challenges and stresses that make sometimes difficult to cope with, and that becomes chronic, as I say. Then we get to stay on the other side, and when we stay there for too long, and that's where, unfortunately, then we get a mental illness, a severe mental illness that we need help for.
And I think you have to have the balance of both as well, don't you? You have to jump over that side every now and again because it makes you appreciate the other side. Whereas you can be complacent that you're too over this side. So actually being able to interchange between two and not stay too long in the bad side is good for you.
No, absolutely. Because can you imagine a life? And I say this to my students because they are on a program that's very demanding, very stressful, and we all appreciate that because they have so much they have to do. Because the nature of the program they are studying, they have the academic side, they have the practical side, and they are not like some degrees. Well, by come May, June, they're off. No, they're still on the program. Now they are doing their practice learning, and as the point you're making, I used to say to them, look, can you imagine if you had a life where everything happens your way, you have no challenge at all, you don't have to deal with any stresses at all? What kind of life would that be? You will not learn anything and you will never thrive. That growth that we talk about, that will never happen. Just like you said, we do, absolutely. And we're all equipped to manage these. But unfortunately, there are certain things that we don't do that take us to that side that I was referring to, that other side where we tend to stay there for too long. Yeah, absolutely, you're right. Yeah, life without these challenges will not be. It's not the reality how life is actually.
Well, like Gav was saying, 'cause he's a physio by trade, and he was saying like sometimes people go to him with a bad back or slip discs, and they're unaware that they're also depressed. They're just thinking it's part of the injury, but one comes with the other, doesn't it? If you're constantly in pain all the time or you can't sleep properly, obviously that is going to affect your mental health and your well-being. Would you like to just say something about that?
That's
Gav?
right, yeah. So a lot of the times we may be presenting with a little bit of pain that could be exaggerated. And that pain is exaggerated depending on the factors of what's going on in your life. Did you just have a recent passing in your family? Did you just have a friend that you've not had a great relationship with anymore? Are there things that are socially happening that has now made this pain become more exaggerated? And a lot of the times, what happens is these individuals who are experiencing whether it could be their depression or whether it is that they're feeling some form of anxiety, place themselves in a situation where they don't mobilize as much because they are exaggerating that pain, if you like. We're not saying that the pain doesn't exist, but we are saying that there are other factors that have obviously influenced it to make it become a lot more higher than what it actually is.
Well, that could be like loneliness, not being able to do what you think you used to be able to do, and self-esteem, and then that self-esteem affects us and it becomes hopelessness.
That's right. And when we talk to these individuals, are we talking to them with meaningful conversations? Are we trying to understand them from a perspective where they feel heard and understood? And a lot of the times, it's all great, you can give the advice on what to do, but sometimes some people just want to know that you've been able to make them smile, you've been able to make them feel good. And what that does is it allows the body to produce these hormones, well, your dopamines and your serotonin, and it allows them to actually embrace the other side of, I think I'm going to try this exercise because it makes me feel good. But that's because the rapport of what you built with that one-to-one connection with the person who was administering these exercises to you. And this is the importance of what it takes to build effective rapport with an individual, because they sometimes may not know that they're experiencing the mental health to begin with.
And the physical effects of actually having poor mental health is phenomenal as well. You know, a lot of the problems you're seeing in mental health, you feel within your body, whether it's inflammation, whether it gives me a dicky tummy when I'm anxious, whatever it is, it's connected, isn't it?
That's right.
What would you say about that, Pras, when the physical and the mental come hand in hand?
It is absolutely connected, and unfortunately, as I say, I was referring to earlier, times when people tend to separate these two. You can't separate these. They, how you feel affect physically how you are, and how you are physically affect emotionally how you feel. And that connection is evident if you look at the system of how the body works, and what also Gav was referring. And sometimes we tend to forget to ask about, someone is come to, I mean, I'm sure we don't do that anymore now, but there was a time when, if you want to see somebody about your physical health or your mental health, they will only be asking you about the mental health, but not vice versa, because these two are connected. And there is an interesting nerve. It's called the vagus nerve that goes so many places in the body, and it's all fascinating neuroscientists about how this nerve works. And it's called the term vagus comes from Latin word vagabond. You know what a vagabond is? It's wandering everywhere. The wanderer, he wanders everywhere, and that's an interesting one because it connects what we call the other brain. These found down in your intestine, and all these what is going on within this area, how that impacts the brain when you're eating. Some people say you are what you eat, and these kind of analogies that they make, and they're not wrong, because it does absolutely, and these two are connected. So we need to look at the body as the physical and the mental together. And that's the term holistic that's used a lot in care, and that's what it means. Basically, we need to look at the whole person, the physical health and the mental health, and there are other aspects as well, spiritual and other things also that feed into that.
But that's an interesting point you make there, Pras, because as a physiotherapist, I have met certain users in my work field, and I have seen situations pass me by where I've met with the individual there and then, and they've expressed to me upon our first interaction, I don't want to be here anymore. And you get a comment like that from someone who's a physiotherapist like myself. And what interpersonal skills have I been able to develop through my trade that allows me to deal with this? Well, actually, it wasn't from my physiotherapy degree that I was able to learn how to have the interpersonal skills to deal with this matter. In the way in which I dealt with this matter, though, I just let that person feel heard. And they were watching a movie, 1950s movie in black and white. And I thought, how can I ask this person to let's exercise, or let's get your joints moving now? They've just expressed to me that they don't want to be here anymore. So I said, I'll watch this movie with him for 5 minutes. And I just got him to express these characters that were playing in there. And a song came on, and I was listening to the song, and I was like, I know this song. And then the lyrics were playing as they were playing, and I thought, I'm going to try and sing along with the lyrics. And
If I'd have done that, I'd finished him off.
I stepped in and it was, oh, I'm just a soul whose intentions are good. Oh Lord, please don't let me be misunderstood. And as I sing that with him, he smiles at me. And just there and then, I was able to effectively build a rapport with him where this man, who was a couch potato, did not want to move, started to mobilize, exercise, come out of his house. Upon, of course, every time I visit him. But what I'm trying to connect here back to is the physiotherapists are not taught to deal with mental health. And if it presents, do they know how to engage with somebody so that they are not thrown off themselves and they are in a position where they can say, okay, let me take this approach instead. They very well much are not prepared with that, because mental health is not something that, in my opinion, I've seen get spoken about enough. What do you take on that, Pras?
Look, you've hit the nail on the head here. The thing is, and you use the word understood, and one of the English word I love probably most is that word understand. They couldn't have put it any better. To understand somebody, you have to stand under. Otherwise, you will never understand that. And it's about validating their feelings. And
That's right.
Someone is coming to you. I mean, can you imagine somebody in chronic pain? And they are physical pain I'm talking about. They are living with this all the time. If they're not depressed, I was surprised if they are not depressed, because if you had, I mean, recently I had, as I said, I had an injury, and it had only for a week. It's getting better now. And I'm saying to myself, what if I had this forever?
Yeah.
How would I live with this? I will be depressed. Absolutely. And if I'm going to someone to ask for help, and if that person cannot even see what I'm going through before they even ask me to do all these things, and they can't even have this conversation with me, cannot validate cannot recognize what I'm going through, I can't see how that person is going to be able to help me. So what you're talking about, I mean, the fundamentals of the communication skills, but the fundamentals of mental health, everyone should have it.
Yes.
And it's something very important that we should educate all the helping profession. All the helping professionals should have that fundamental in mental health, and being able to, we're not asking them to become an expert, but being able to connect with that person, being able to have that conversation, being able to get them to see, look, oh, that person really cares or really wants to help me and can see what I'm going through. Otherwise, how get past to, oh, I'm going to prescribe you all these set of exercise and all that. It's never going to work.
I think just going back to what you say there, when someone has chronic pain and they're depressed, it always shocks me. My youngest daughter, severely disabled, so I'm kind of part of the disabled community where I see all kinds of different people. And you will see some who are in a lot of pain, who they are depressed. But on the other side, you'll see some who are in I can't say the same amount of pain because it's hard to measure, but they're in pain, but they're so full of life. And all that is a mental change, isn't it? There's no real difference. It's them mentally. Actually, I might be in a lot of pain. I might be feeling this, but I still want to live life. I still want to enjoy as much as I can, even with this pain.
Yeah, and it's look, we're all different, yeah, and how we deal with challenges that come our way. I mean, it might be, and if you mentioned the example you've given, our outlook on life is different. I mean, there's something called our personality, and that's another area that probably we won't get a chance to talk about. And it's another interesting one. Where does that come from? And I mentioned resilience earlier. Our ability to bounce back. it's different in all of us. Some of us have, you know, a half glass, you call the glass half empty, half full. We all have a different outlook of life, and you make put two different people with the same condition, and you will find out they will respond in different ways. And this is where, when it comes to mental health, mental illness, that's why you see you give the same medication. You will see the people with the same illness are given different medication because they don't work the same way for the person, because there are stuff that we still don't fully understand, that in the anatomy, physiology, and everything else, neuroscience and all that. There's a lot of work being done to understand it, but people are different, and we need to provide that, like what Gavin was talking about, that individualized care, and being able to understand from the perspective of the person that, you may be seeing 2 or 3 patients with the same condition, but they're all different, and they will bring different experiences, life experiences I'm talking about, and everything else with them that, that makes them different to how you care and treat them.
I think what you just said is right, because they have the same condition, but they're a different person. And it's the same like in a boxing gym. We've all come here to learn how to box, but Muhammad Ali couldn't box like George Foreman, like Mike Tyson, like Lex Lewis. And it's allowing them, like, as you say, everyone has got their limit as well, haven't they? Everyone's got their limit. They could be through the worst pain ever, the worst child abuse ever, but then the goldfish dies, and that goldfish was the only good thing in their life, and they fall apart. Or someone else, it could be their relationship breaking down, or we've all got that moment that just tips us over the edge, and it's understanding that, and you go, well, blooming heck, that's nothing, but to that person, that was everything. And that's what Gavin was on about, that human empathy, that humanity, that kindness comes out going, I can't understand fully, but I'm here to listen to you. Why was that so important to you?
And that's very important there that you mentioned your daughter there, Lee, with a situation, because, and you guys, Kev and Pras, mentioned personalities. You can see that although her experiences in life has made her feel like she's got setbacks in certain areas, she still has it within her mind to want to release these hormones where she can feel that dopamine and that serotonin. These two major things here happen based on the interaction you have with the individual. So just like how Kevin was talking about Muhammad Ali and other fighters, well, the coaches for them would definitely train them differently because of their personalities, but in how they were able to secrete those hormones, the dopamine and the serotonin, is based upon how they would use their language and interaction. So 3 people could have the same conditions but present differently in their personalities. But it's important for us as the individual to be able to present with a situation where they can interact with the situation, and it allows them to release these hormones.
Getting the best out of that person, isn't it?
That's right. That's right.
And allowing them to have that safe space of going, I haven't been exactly where you've been, but I've been somewhere similar. And then by sharing your experiences, your wins and your losses, that gives that community, and we're always talking about community here, and that place where they are accepted. They haven't got sympathy, they've got empathy, they've got an understanding. And I think that's where we go wrong, where we pity people. No one wants to be pitied.
No.
But you just want a safe place where you go, you get me, or you're trying your best to understand the story I'm telling.
And it's great that the environment that you have here, Kev, with the boxing gym and the community that you do have, is the individuals are not forced to have to speak about anything.
No.
They just turn up, and upon the way that they interact with the others, something special happens. The more they come, they end up feeling and speaking about things that they normally wouldn't do with a stranger. And that is amazing to have in this day and age, because a community is what we thrive on. How is that taken away from us is through social media and technology. And it's important for us to always factor in, right? It's our community that will always allow us to be able to deal with these mental pressures and these other ordeals.
What do you say about that, Pras?
Look, that's- we all need that sense of belonging, and feel part of a community. And one of the things that I probably mentioned to you before, it's when you provide a place, a safe place where people can come and feel that they belong, feel they get empowered, and enable them to become resilient. That is transformational. It's an important, you're plugging an important gap by doing that and helping people to feel part of that community, and not to feel isolated. And I think it's going back to what we were talking about. We're all very different, but there are some communities called, there are some term used as marginalized or undeserved communities who face significant barriers, unfortunately, to access essential resources or services, particularly in areas of healthcare. And I've seen it in prison. When I was working there, half of them haven't seen their GP, and they've never had any help, and they've never even gone to seek any help. And the barriers were there all the time. And these different factors, it could be race, could be ethnicity, it could be socio-economic status, it could be even where one lives geographically. I'm talking about the UK, I'm not talking even in another country here, I'm talking even here in this country. And disability itself, which we've kind of touched on earlier, all of these other social determinants of health that we can go on and talk so much about. And in a sense, when these become a barrier, then it's difficult to see how the needs of that population are adequately met by existing services and systems that we have currently in place.
And there's nothing worse, is that when you've gone to your GP or you phoned the crisis number, you've done it, and then you still feel fobbed off. Come back in 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, and then you're thinking, it's taken me almost a decade to come and ask for the help, and now I feel let down by the help, and that's so hard to get over, isn't it?
It is, and we need to look beyond stereotypes. Unfortunately, there are stereotypes still out there, and I'm not being critical of any healthcare professional here. I mean, the point you are making, sometimes we do get things wrong. Sometimes we, as much as we don't want to be prejudiced by, how we are coming across, but sometimes we do, and we have certain values and a certain judgment that we are making, and which is not helping. And you're right, it happens, and it's something that unfortunately also need to be addressed. And as you say, you've come forward of such a long time, you want to get the help you need, and if you don't get it for reason that when one looks at it and say, why did somebody fob you off? What was it that was that person saw in you? Was there some kind of stereotype here that these people that it's okay, they don't need the help?
And sometimes, Pras, these healthcare professionals, they are human themselves, and they must have a lot of pressure in their own day-to-day life, where if we're expecting them to play their role at their best, they should be absolutely fit to do so. But when they are not, and life is getting the best of them and it's testing them, where do they go? And what support do they have? And has that been administered into their lives where they've got someone to turn to for their mental support?
No, absolutely, you're right. Look, as I say, I'm not being critical of any healthcare professional, but there are many factors out there. We heard, I mean, you were talking about suicide earlier, Kevin. Suicide in the profession itself, especially after COVID, it's gone up. I'm talking about the nursing profession here, and so there are so many factors, and sometimes people, you want the help you need. You've gone there, you want, and this is not making an excuse for them, absolutely not. But they, like Gavin was saying, they're working under so much pressure and resources may be very limited, and they themselves are struggling. And I've recently written a paper about, you want to put your patient first, and that's what you want to do, but that should not be at the detriment of your own health and well-being. Because if you can't look after yourself, how are you going to look after others? And I will use this analogy on the plane, when they say oxygen mask will fall, and when the oxygen fall under and below, what level that that you will have on a plane, and the mask you should always put your own mask first.
I know something I struggle with, because like being here all the time and helping my boxers, helping people, and you're always taking people's problems on, and often those kind of people like myself put your own problems to the back. And sometimes, and I've even been there, and I bet a lot of listeners get this, you're saying, I can't have any more. And people go, no, but careful. And you go, please, let me be. No, because they can't see your role as anything but the fixer, the carer, the looker after. So when that person who normally looks after you says, please let me rest, allow them to rest. Because if they go down, the whole ship goes down with them. And we are important, but other people are important as well. So if you do notice your rock is crumbling, help the rock.
Absolutely, because in the profession, I don't practice now, I teach, and it's easier to find yourself on the other side of the counter. Because, as I said, it's a gradual thing. It's interesting. You will think somebody who's helping others will be able to recognize what's happening to them very quickly, but they don't, because they almost like work in this automatic mode where they are doing all their best. They're putting themselves out there. They're trying to help. They're doing everything at the detriment of their own health and well-being. And before they knew it, they found themselves in a place where they can't help anybody else now because they need help. And so it brings back to what point I was making, how important to looking after ourselves before we look after anybody else, and recognizing when things are becoming too much, and these pressure, these stress buckets that a reference is made a lot about. Have you got all the taps? Are they all functioning? Are you able to to reduce the stress and to let out the stress? And if you're not, then it's not just you, because we don't live, most of us, if not all of us, we live with others. It's not just us, it's the other people who live with also are affected by it, and we have to think about how that impact upon them as well.
And what kind of advice would you give to someone, Pras, like to help their well-being?
The thing is, with well-being, there is a lot of things that we can do for ourselves. I'm talking about mental well-being here, is our ability to recognize, and the awareness of there's something not going right with us that we need help for, and we need to get that help. But even before we get there are so many other things that we can do. In the brain fitness, for example, it refers to the different, the three types of brain that we have, and recognizing which one are we using, because we're all hardwired to protect ourselves. The fight and flight, we are all born with it. And I'm talking about human being. If you look at even animals, for example, it's transferred through generation. You will see, and there are certain herds or even animal cows, like they won't go through next to that electric fence because it's been hardwired in them from previous generation. They haven't learned it from it, nobody's taught them, but it's there. And we sort of process evolution. We've come from a place where we were protecting ourselves, and our brain is functioning in a way that it's always protecting us. It's always making us becoming alert of what's going on in our surrounding, and sometimes it misreads things as well, and that's where we get ourselves in a place where we become very stressed for a reason that we shouldn't, but because it's there to protect us and we are using it a lot. And also recognizing which, as I say, which part we are using, and then you have the second part, which is where everything is stored, and our memories, our experiences is stored, and then you have the third one, which we start to make rationalize what's going on here, and using logic to say, oh, hang on, this is not really what's happening. But if we regress to the point where we go back to that primitive brain, and we are always on the defense, and we are looking out for where the threats are, that becomes a problem in terms of how we function. So it's about recognizing which part of the brain we are using in our daily life.
I really like how you put that, Pras, because if we have an individual who is at home and is staying in their bed, if you like, for most of the day, and by the time they come out of their bed, they only have the capacity to do something physical for about 40 minutes to an hour. What you're showing us there through what you've explained, mentally, these are the things that they're having to deal with for themselves. So all those hours that they're in their bed, they're actually dealing with these thoughts. And it's only until they use that third part that you said, that logical point, where they say, okay, let me at least try and do something to better the situation. Okay, I'll clean the table. Okay, I'll put this jug away. Okay, I'll make some food for myself. Okay, I'll brush my teeth. Okay, I'll have a bath. And it's recognizing that just starting with a little bit physically through this, that you're able to then increase the tolerance very slowly. You don't have to go from overloading, and you don't have to do too little, but just being able to slowly increase the tolerance levels. If it's 20 minutes more, and then if it's 30 minutes more as the week go by, that in itself, combined with what you're saying mentally there, allows, I would say, the mind and the body to be able to progress from that question that Kevin had asked of how to improve the mental well-being, if you like.
Yeah, there are, you see, all these interaction which I referred to earlier, the reptilian brain, where there is a limbic system which adds the emotional intensity, and then you have the neocortex, which is the one that regulates and rationalizes your response. They're all interacting. We need all of them, but we need them in certain contexts at a certain level, because one is making sure that our survival reflexes are working. Because if you step out tomorrow and you just say, "Oh, I'm chill, don't worry, this car is coming, I'm not going to worry," you won't be worried for long.
Yeah.
And if we don't store certain memory about stuff that's happened, we'll never learn from these. But unfortunately, as I say, when that part of the brain is so much stress there, it doesn't work. That part that we start to rationalize and regulate the response, and that becomes an issue. Because if you look at it crudely, what do we suffer? We suffer from our memory and our imagination, because there are stuff that's happened in the past that still we are trying to process and we are trying to work through, and it still causes a lot of issues. And there are stuff that hasn't even happened, causes a lot of anxiety, because we think the worst case scenario. And So to answer your question, Kevin, it's about looking at ourselves and understanding how we function. And I say we're all very different, so you can't be prescriptive about saying, this will work for everyone. But having this awareness about how we are not responding but reacting to things. I mean, one typical example I can give you, I mean, you and Lee, I take it, are very good friends. I mean, if you're walking the street and Lee's walking towards you on the other side and he's looking at you, you're looking at him, he just blank you completely and just walk past you, and you smile at him, you got no response, he just walked past you. What's the first thought that comes to your mind?
What's wrong? Is he okay? Have I offended him?
Yeah, I mean, you will think, have I done something wrong here?
Yeah.
But it will not occur to you. Maybe Lee's in his own world. He's absorbed what's going on, because this is the defense thing that I was talking to you, because automatically we're wired to think in that way. And the second thought about maybe he hasn't even seen me, that comes later, because the bit that we use a lot is that survival bit, because we want to protect ourselves. We are putting walls all around us because we feel, hang on, there is a threat coming, and sometimes these threats, they don't materialize because it's our way of how we interpret information gets a bit distorted, and we see things that is as a threat when they are not, and then we become stressed. We will have all this other stuff that happens to us. So it's about working and looking at ourselves in terms of what is happening in us. And it's also, as I say, there are lots of things that we can do when first thing you wake up. I mean, what do? You charge your phone, you look at your text, you look at what messages come, or do you charge this one, the brain, the mind? The first thing, do you do that, or first thing and before you go to bed, what do? Are you checking your last text, or or are you taking time? How much time are we investing on our mental well-being? That is where I would say that's where we start.
I think what you just said there, Pras, like going back, like we either live in the past or in the imagination. That's really stuck in my head, and I'll use that a lot. Because on that analogy, when you're saying Lee just walked past, on my past experiences, if somebody ignores them, I must have done something wrong, or da 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 da, and then you catastrophize in your mind, have we fallen out, and that'll really resonate in my mind. That will, what you just said, and I'll talk to people a lot, that because a lot of that is we can't change what's happened, but we change our perception of it, don't we? As you said, when I look back and thinking, well, Lee's reaction to me probably had nothing to do with me at all. Lee is just going through his own struggles. But our self-importance doesn't see that, because my world evolves around me, whereas his world evolves around him. And sometimes you've got to take yourself out the situation.
Very well said, Kev. We are perception creators.
Yeah.
If we don't like a situation or how it makes us feel, we have the power to change that.
Because see whatever happens to us, how we respond to that. I mean, if now I say something not very nice to any of you here, and well, let's say for example, any second I will call any of you an idiot. Yeah.
Wouldn't be the first one today.
Now, how the choice to respond to what I have just said, that's you still got that. You still have that choice. It's up to you. I mean, nobody's taken that away from you. I mean, it's not nice what somebody may have said to you. I mean, you see, like I'm using this as an example, but you see with road rage and all these things. And I have an example where I was in a car park at university. It was a while ago. It was this lady who, I think she was such in a rush to get out and tried to cut past and nearly crash into me. And I looked at her, and but I think she couldn't get it. It was right behind her, and she was trying her best, and she was not looking great. And I stopped the car, and now she was at the barrier, and the barrier will not open. And I knock at her door, at the window, and I say hello, and she looked at me, and the look on her face, and she was so frightened. And I think, with the window down, and she wasn't sure. I said, it's okay. I said, look, I'm not a violent person. I'm just talking to you. What you just done there, if somebody else was in my place was violent, do you know what would have happened now? Just think about it. That you are in that car, you think you are protected in it, you're safe in it, but you're not. And it doesn't matter whatever you want to go. I mean, what will happen? What the worst case scenario will happen here? And think about it. And it's always this case where we are in a rush to get somewhere. We are thinking in a certain way. We don't see the result of what could happen, what would happen, but we are so caught up in our own world, like you say, and it does happen. It happens a lot, yeah.
And I think we've all got emotions. We're happy, we're angry, we feel lust, we feel anger. But I think when we only go on emotion and not sense and logic, that's when it becomes a problem. If I'm only thinking as a lustful man, I'm not always going to make the best decisions. And same with an angry. Sometimes you go, I feel the emotion, but that emotion isn't going to rule me. And I say that when my wife has road rage, I go, if he gets out the car, our life will never be the same. Don't let a moment of madness cost you everything. And I think older you get, more you can take a deep breath and go, I'm reacting on emotion, not on sense. Take a deep breath, think about it. Is it
I think
in the best?
To me, it goes more than that. Why spoil your own happiness because someone's cut you up? I don't get that. It's not going to change the outcome whether he's cut you up or not. So why let it affect you that much that it gets you angry? And then you're going to wreck that potentially the next minute or the next whole day or
25 years.
Well, that's it. You don't know. Just don't. It's irrelevant in life. It will make no difference. So let it be.
But it's seeing these traits in yourself. Your outlook changes as you get older, doesn't it, Pras? You should feel different as you go through hurdles and experience and build more resilience, because you're not acting just on impulse. You're now acting on lessons that we should have learned throughout our life.
Yeah, you take your time to reflect. I mean, if I look at myself, how I was when I was at college, my goodness, I was nothing like I am now. But it's taken me quite a bit of time to, life experience also help, but also to reflect. Now the way I look at things is very different, because there was a time when I would have done the same. I would have reacted in the same way, and but it's learning about having the wisdom now to learn how I was before and how I am now. It's a lot. It's a lot about life, but also it's taking. I mean, if I give you an example, when I was in prison, I used to work with individuals who have anger management, and some of them have ended in prison because they couldn't control their anger, their emotions, and when I was talking to a few of them, and they say, "Well, I just saw red and I did something, and I can't help it. It's just happened, and I don't think I can do anything different." So, I said, "Okay, yeah, let's." Even that moment when you saw red, there are things that's happening to you. Your own body's giving you some cues, but you're not taking any notice of what the cues are. And what I used to do, I used to freeze, and I used to take they gave me an example, and I said, okay, let's freeze that moment. We used if it was happening within 2 or 3 seconds, we used to let's freeze this and rerun this fractions of a second, and we start to look at what it was happening. The physical signs were there already, but you haven't noticed it. There are things that were happening in you and you didn't recognize them. And then we start working on that, and how interesting and surprisingly stuff. Oh yeah. And this did happen to me. And they start working on themselves and recognizing certain cues, which before they thought it was just they saw red, but it wasn't. there are certain things that we can recognize and do something about it before we get to that point of no recall. I used to give them this this interesting analogy about the Niagara Falls. When you see the fall, when you are there, this is where it doesn't matter how many anchors you throw, you are not going to get out of it. Now you've gone to the point of no recall. But let's think about before, where the water is very calm and everything, before it picks up, and it start to get to that flow where it's rushing down, and we get them to that point, and then they start thinking, oh yes. And so there are things we can get people to work on as well, and get them to recognize things that they probably never paid any notice to.
Well, I think that's what counselling, I mean, I've done counselling, NLP, hypnotherapy, and what it's done to it, and what Emily Barney does in this very room with Mind Fitness. It's learning yourself, isn't it? Learning when you're going to get in that rabbit hole, when you're going to get angry, when you're going to have a wobble. And I think more you can get to know yourself and your own triggers, you do realise they are avoidable. Or if I am going to go over the cliff, to know what to expect. So it's not frightening there. Once you've been through it once, twice, 100 times, you know what you're ahead of.
Yeah, but what's interesting with the brain is what I used to say to these individuals. I mean, we did that, but we only just did these kind of exercises. I used to get them through, but also we used to do these relaxation techniques and everything else, where they thought, breathing, how's that going to help me? But
if you don't do it, you die.
No, absolutely. And so we used to go through each of them individually and get them to really pay attention to themselves, and we did get them to that point where you can't. I'm not going to say that suddenly you're going to change completely, but it did help. It did help them. Yeah.
I've been very fortunate to be trained by Emily to administer the Brain Fit program that she does do. And one of the most amazing things I have found in this is it's not an area where it lets you talk about any negative stuff. It's completely focused on you talking about the positives. And when you have an individual who doesn't heavily discuss their positives from day-to-day life because they're through loneliness or through lack of people that they are interacting with, it really gets their mind warming up when they start to have to present with some positive ideas and positive thoughts. And that area of being able to make an individual start to look at life from a positive perspective, rather than when Kevin mentioned if he saw you, Lee, walking past him and you didn't interact with him, how quickly and sudden the negative thoughts would arrive. This type of training allows the mind to stay within a positive frequency, if you like. So I can see the importance in how being able to maintain an individual's way of thinking, it comes down to also their self-development and how much are they willing to want to work on themselves to get themselves out of this zone that they've been currently in. Because how many times have you seen an individual make the same mistakes over and over again, but impulsively react?
It's one of the best things about the brain as well. You can change it just through repetition to do things like think more positive.
Yeah.
But it also works the other way, that if your repetition is negative, you'll see everything negative.
And as Pras said, like nature over nurture. If your nurture has always been the glass is half empty, the glass is half, or the glass is half full, it's easier to pick up good habits if you're around good people, and easier to pick up bad habits if you're. So it's, but that hasn't got to be your forever, has it, Pras? As we learned it, we can unlearn it, and vice versa.
Absolutely, you can. I mean, the point Lee was making about, you can train your brain to work in a different way, because remember the three brains I was referring to earlier, which system is dominating? And it's when the primitive system is dominating. This is where, unfortunately, you're suppressing this high order thinking, the logic, the mindfulness, and the breathing that you do, and all the other things will re-engage that high order brain, that high order thinking, to restore that balance. And that's the beauty of it, because some of the work that I did with these individuals, when I got them to rate themselves, which Emily does as well, rate before and after, and they couldn't believe it. They thought this was, rubbish. I mean, how can this is going to help me? But when after, I don't know, about probably about 6 classes they had, they were saying to me, I was on the wing, and someone said something, and that would have pissed me off, and I would have done something, but I didn't. And I said, okay, so what do you think happened to you? Why did you not react the way you were before? It's amazing. I mean, I don't know. I was a bit annoyed in a way myself, because why didn't I react? Why didn't I do what I would have punched this guy before, but I didn't. And I said, look, this is, you retrain your brain to restore that balance, to take time and not to engage the other system very quickly and go and trying to fight that person. Yeah, absolutely, you can do that.
And like with that person, they've got comfortable being angry. They've been comfortable because there's something safe in being angry. I know it feels, and if I bang my chest and I throw tables and I throw punches, I feel safe because I feel manly. There's something unsettling about being vulnerable and wanting to change, because how about if I try to change but I can't change? But that's the real strength of it, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's what the anger is giving is a strength. It's building up all, getting you ready for that situation, and you because you've relied so much on that strength, and the strength we're talking about, the strength of fighting something, but not the inner strength of not reacting to it, and because the other one will get you somewhere else.
Yeah.
Whereas this one, at least it's think, and the other thing is to think about, and I used to say to them, the stress hormone, the cortisol, when you get angry, unfortunately what you're doing, you're slowly killing yourself. Because you're releasing stuff is not good for you. Inflammation we were talking about and all that. That's what causes all the inflammation. And so next time when you get angry, say to yourself, what am I doing here? I might be getting angry. I want to fight this person, but what am I doing to myself first? And if you think about rationally, no, you wouldn't.
It's interesting, Pras, because you touched on the paper that you did for being able to support healthcare professionals. But do you have anything in mind for future papers that you're currently looking to do research on regarding where you could look into this type of area that we're discussing right now?
I think the area that I touched on earlier when I was talking about, what you're doing here, Kevin, and I don't know again until you research it, you find out who comes to the gym and who are these individuals, and explore not just the immediate benefits about, when they are involved in the when they get involved in the gym, but also what the gym is providing them. I think there is, and I mentioned the boxing community earlier. I think it's an area that would be useful to look at, tapping a group that is providing them something more than just boxing itself, but also that sense of belonging that I was talking about, that safe space, and that gave them that escape from adversity, whatever they have, challenges they are facing, whether it's discrimination, whatever else, poverty, violence, it could be anything, and that sanctuary that the place offers in terms of where the struggles are channeled into discipline rather than destructive outlets, which whatever they may be using before to to get to overcome their challenges. I think it's an area that would be useful. Anyone listening, anyone wants to support and fund this, I think this is an area that would be very useful to look at, how in this way, how it's benefited those who are coming to the gym for boxing.
It'd be great, Nick, 'cause we've got so many people from all different colours, creeds, ages, economical backgrounds, and what it does, it gives people a focus, gives them purpose, and it gives them love. And yeah, if someone would like to back us and hopefully get this project up, and so we can get the paperwork and the research there, and help us publish it, it'd be fantastic. It'd be something I'd definitely be involved in.
Yeah, and it could be, again, I'm not making an assumption. It could be people are coming with unprocessed trauma, issues
yeah.
that they've dealt with, and having that physical outlet here in a way, in some way, but also what I would say is that ritual of discipline to rebuild control over their lives, and I think it would be great if you could do that. Actually, yeah.
And you give a safe space, because obviously what me and Lee have created here with the Black Country Blokes goes hand in hand with downstairs. But how many times I've had that awkward conversation, but I'm glad I had the conversation. Someone will say I was the first person who, this is adults, not children, because if it's children, I have to get in touch with safeguarding. But adults will say when they're abused, or when this happened or happened, and they've said they've carried it for 20, 30, 40 years, but it's given them that safe space to talk about it. And they've said like they've never had that person who they could open up to. So it's great that we can have these hard but rewarding conversations with them.
It's a very good thing that you touch on there, Kev, because from a physio perspective, we have this model that we look at things from, and it's a biopsychosocial model. But you being able to socially have this place here for them to come to, psychologically allow them to open up with these ongoing things. But their biological was always being able to be worked on through the physical of what you were giving them here. And they all interact with each other. And remarkably, you get such a positive outcome from being able to provide such an environment to begin with these individuals.
Well, people say, how do you get men to talk? When all you got to do is get them there first. And I say, how do you get them to talk about mental health? When get them talking, and then get them sweating. And then eventually, or whether it's cutting wood or punching the bag or whatever you're doing, and eventually conversations start, and then wherever it takes them, it takes them. But we've just set up that place where they can feel, if they want to, when they hear me talk about whatever, fatherhood, depression, anxiety, whatever, having a hangover, whatever it is, they could join in with the conversation, or they could pull one of us aside and say, I didn't want to say it in the group, however, can I have a word with you?
And isn't it amazing, those with Parkinson's that come here?
Arthritis.
Yeah, and in the end of it all, they do love to sit down and have that social interaction with you, whether it's going to be something deep that Pras just touched on, trauma that they've not, released to anybody else, or just situations that they just wish to speak on that they wouldn't usually do.
The baby's kept them up all night, but they can't talk to the mates in the pub about that. They can't talk to the mates on the football pitch or on the playground. But when your kids kept you up all night, or you're worried it might not be this, we're waiting for blood tests. Where men want to talk as much as women, but we just don't often know how to get it started. So that's what we're trying to do: give them that safe place where the conversation's already started. Jump in on it when you're ready. Well, Pras, thank you. Well, thank you to the pair of you for coming on. Is there anything, I'll say to you first, Pras, is there anything you want to say before we end tonight?
Yeah, I mean, I've mentioned the boxing community quite a few times, and I would like to end by saying that a boxing community isn't about fighting, it's about fighting for each other. And the community that we were talking about, whether it's marginalized or undeserved group or whoever might be coming, this, for them, it can mean the difference between feeling invisible and feeling seen, capable, and being united, and feeling that they belong to a community.
And I would just like to finish off with those who are listening in and who are dealing with mental health. My advice is simply take the pressure off and live life for yourself and not for the expectations of anybody else.
So first of all, Gav, have you got any quotes or sayings that have helped you get through life?
That quote itself, live life for yourself and not for the expectations of somebody else, allows me to just enjoy the moment that I'm in today, not what is for tomorrow, not what is of yesterday. Just deal with today and what will be enjoyable for going on from that moment there.
And Pras, same question to you, bruv.
Yeah, from everything we've discussed, you can't stop the waves. These waves will come. They will come. But what you can do, you can learn how to ride these waves.
Well, guys, thank you to you two for both coming on.
Thank you.
And guys, thank you for listening. So until we see each other all next time, I want you all to take care of yourselves and each other.
Thank
Ta-ra,
you.
bud.
Thank you.
Listen.
And that's a wrap for another show. But if there are any comments or messages that you would like us to read out for our next podcast, please be in touch. There are also lots of different organisations at the bottom of this page, and hopefully they can help you or someone you care about. Please share this to spread the word. Until we talk next time, ta-ra a bit.